Michael Anderson was a 50-year-old CIA agent with nearly 2 decades of experience under his belt. Known for his sharp intellect, careful attention to detail, and calm, calculating demeanor, he had become one of the most trusted agents within the Bureau. His reputation as a no-nonsense, reliable professional had served him well, and his career was on an upward trajectory. He had sacrificed personal time, friendships, and many of life's pleasures to climb the ranks of the CIA. To the outside world, Michael seemed like an ideal family man. He had been married to his wife Jennifer for 17 years, and their relationship was often the envy of their social circles. They had a beautiful home and 2 children, and were often seen at charity events and family gatherings looking like the perfect couple. Jennifer, too, was a well-educated woman, independent and successful in her own right. However, behind the polished facade, Michael had started to wrestle with an inner conflict that would soon spiral out of control. He had met Emma Collins, a bright, ambitious, and strikingly beautiful young woman in the CIA office. Emma had joined as an administrative assistant, but her work ethic and eagerness quickly caught the eye of her superiors, especially Michael. Though their professional interactions initially seemed harmless, it didn't take long for the two to begin a secretive, passionate affair. Emma was in her early 20s when she started working closely with Michael. She was everything he wanted, youthful, attractive, and driven. Emma had just moved to Washington, D.C. with dreams of carving out a career in public service. She admired Michael not only for his accomplishments within the CIA, but for the aura of power and experience that surrounded him. Their affair began with stolen glances and casual conversations, and before long developed into a complete emotional and physical entanglement. For Michael, the affair with Emma became an escape from his increasingly strained marriage. His bond with Jennifer had begun to fray. The long hours at work, the late-night phone calls, and his growing sense of dissatisfaction with domestic life made the allure of the young secretary irresistible. As their secret relationship deepened, so did the risk, and yet they both pressed forward, intoxicated by the thrill of their illicit encounters. Jennifer Anderson, despite her own successes, had always placed her family first. She had supported Michael's ambitions unconditionally, knowing the sacrifices he made for his career. They had started their life together as a team, and for a time, they were deeply in love. Jennifer and Michael built a life that many would consider ideal, but the cracks began to show when Michael's behavior started to change. At first, Jennifer dismissed her growing concerns as stress from his demanding job. But as the months wore on, she couldn't ignore the late nights, the secretive phone calls, and the strange behavior. It started with subtle things, Michael becoming distant, growing impatient, and the increasing time he spent at work. Jennifer, a woman of sharp intellect, soon began to suspect that her husband was hiding something. She confronted him several times, only to be met with reassurances and half-hearted excuses, but her intuition told her something wasn't right. It was during one of their quieter moments together that Jennifer first became aware of Emma Collins. She had overheard a conversation between Michael and another colleague, and the way he spoke of Emma, a subtle tone of reverence mixed with admiration, set off alarm bells in her mind. Despite her suspicions, Jennifer remained in denial, unwilling to believe that the man she loved and trusted could betray her, but the signs grew more evident. Late one night after Michael had left for work, she went through his things, an act she would later regret, but which she felt was necessary for closure. That's when she found the texts. The messages were undeniable, flirtatious, intimate, and filled with promises of love and escape. She couldn't believe what she was reading, but the evidence was right there in front of her. The perfect life they had built was crumbling before her eyes. The perfect life she had built with Michael had crumbled. The betrayal was no longer a suspicion. It was a painful, undeniable truth. As for Emma Collins, who had moved to Washington, D.C. with high hopes of making a difference, she had worked hard to climb the ladder. Her role at the CIA was an exciting step toward achieving her dreams. When she was introduced to Michael, she was in awe of his authority, experience, and accomplishments within the Bureau. But her respect for him quickly evolved into something more complicated. The initial interactions between Emma and Michael were professional, but as they spent more time together, Their connection deepened. He would often confide in her about his frustrations with work, his marriage, and his longing for something more fulfilling. Emma, eager to please, began to take on a more personal role in his life, often meeting him after hours to share meals or drinks. At first, Emma believed that their relationship was just a harmless fling, an escape from the pressures of their respective lives. But over time, her feelings for Michael became far more profound. She convinced herself that their connection was special, and that one day they could be together, free of secrets and lies. She had no idea how close they were to a breaking point. For Emma, the affair was a whirlwind, but as she became more emotionally invested, the toll it took on her became more evident. She began to pressure Michael for more time, more affection, more commitment. But Michael, though he cared for her in his own way, was unwilling to risk everything for their relationship. His career, his reputation, and his marriage to Jennifer were still more important to him. Despite his growing affection for Emma, he continually brushed off her demands for something more. The affair between Michael and Emma had been going on for over 2 years by the time Jennifer discovered it. During that time, they had become experts at hiding their tracks. They exchanged cryptic messages, met in out-of-the-way places, and kept their relationship confined to stolen moments. They took every precaution to ensure that no one would uncover the truth, but the weight of the deception began to take its toll. As the affair continued, the secrecy weighed heavily on Emma. She wanted more. She wanted to be more than just a secret lover. She pushed Michael harder, demanding to know when their relationship could be more than just an affair. But Michael, despite his growing affection for her, always kept her at arm's length. He was too cautious, too afraid of losing everything. Meanwhile, Jennifer, increasingly suspicious, began to track her husband's movements, watching as he became more distant and secretive. The moment Jennifer found the incriminating text on Michael's phone marked the point of no return. She had confirmation, and now there was no turning back. What followed was a period of intense emotional turmoil for Jennifer. The discovery of the affair set into motion a chain of events that would culminate in a tragic and irreversible act of violence. It wasn't just the affair that drove her to murder. It was the depth of the betrayal, the heartbreak, and the realization that her life had been a lie. Her mind, clouded with anger and hurt, concocted a plan for revenge. On the night of the murder, Michael was late returning home, as he often was after meeting Emma. Jennifer, still in a state of disbelief, waited for him in their living room, quietly stewing in the venom of betrayal. When he walked through the door, he immediately sensed something was wrong, but before he could speak, Jennifer simply looked at him, her face an unreadable mask. She asked him about his relationship with his secretary. He tried to explain himself, to justify his actions, but it was too late for words. Jennifer wasn't listening. She wasn't ready to listen to his lies and empty promises of change, and his assurances that nothing meant anything. In a moment of sheer rage, Jennifer grabbed a firearm from the cabinet. She aimed it at Michael, who stood there shocked and unable to react. The shot rang out, loud, final, and unforgiving. Michael fell to the floor, his body still in disbelief even as it fell to the ground. His life ended in that instant. Jennifer stood over him, the weapon in her hand, her heart pounding, shocked by her actions. When the police arrived at the scene, they found Jennifer standing motionless beside the lifeless body of her husband. There was no sign of a struggle, no attempt to defend herself or flee, just the cold, unnerving stillness of a woman who had taken justice into her own hands. The house was eerily quiet, the air thick with the weight of the crime. Jennifer made the call herself, reporting the murder with an unsettling calmness that immediately raised suspicion among the investigators. Her voice was steady, almost devoid of emotion, as she explained that she had shot Michael in a fit of rage. But the lack of panic and the way she recounted the events with clinical precision baffled those who arrived on the scene. There was no frantic apology or tearful explanation, just an odd sense of finality. As the investigation unfolded, evidence pointed to a carefully planned and premeditated crime. It was discovered that Jennifer had been tracking her husband's movements for weeks, if not longer. She had installed tracking software on his phone, Hand kept detailed records of his interactions with Emma. She had observed their secret meetings, noting the time and location of each encounter, and had even monitored his social media activity to confirm her suspicions. The police uncovered Jennifer's journals, filled with graphic descriptions of her emotional state, her thoughts ranging from despair to violent fantasies of revenge. Jennifer had confided in a close friend, telling her in no uncertain terms that she was planning to confront Michael and make him pay for his betrayal. Though the friend had advised her to talk things through with her husband, Jennifer's mind was made up. She had meticulously mapped out her plan, choosing the perfect time and place for the confrontation, an evening when Michael would be alone and when he would not expect her wrath. She had even purchased the gun weeks in advance, hiding it in the drawer of her dresser, waiting for the right moment to strike. Jennifer, the seemingly perfect wife and mother, had turned into a killer, a woman driven to murder by the toxic combination of betrayal, jealousy, and heartbreak. Some saw her as a victim of an unfaithful husband who had shattered her world, while others viewed her as a cold-blooded murderer who had taken matters into her own hands without any regard for the consequences. The media coverage was relentless, with every detail of Jennifer's personal life, including the history of her marriage and the affair, being exposed for all to see. Public opinion was divided. Some sympathized with her, believing that the pain of being betrayed by the man she loved was enough to drive anyone to the edge. Others saw her as manipulative and calculating, a woman who had coldly executed her, planned to take control of her fractured life, regardless of the human cost. As the trial approached, the nation's attention only grew more intense. Jennifer, once seen as a devoted wife and mother, now stood as a symbol of the dangers of unchecked emotional turmoil. Her actions were both tragic and terrifying, a reminder of how a single unforgivable betrayal could unravel everything, a person's sanity, their marriage, and their moral compass. Would she be seen as a victim of circumstance or as a woman who allowed her emotions to spiral into something monstrous? The world watched, awaiting the answer. As the investigation continued, the focus shifted to Emma, the woman who had been the catalyst for the tragic chain of events. She was brought in for questioning, her emotions a mix of confusion and fear as she tried to make sense of the situation. The police, after thorough interrogation, ruled her out as a suspect in the murder. To Emma, the affair had been a fleeting connection, one that she believed was hidden in the shadows of Michael's marriage. She had never expected that it would come to this. Her life, too, was suddenly turned upside down. She had been blind to the depth of the resentment brewing within Jennifer, and the idea that it could end in such a violent, irreversible way left her stunned and shaken. As detectives pieced together the timeline of events, it became clear that the affair was merely the spark that ignited an underlying and simmering resentment that Jennifer had been harboring for years. Beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect marriage, there had been tension and unmet emotional needs. Michael had become distant over time, and though Jennifer tried to ignore it, she couldn't help but notice the signs of his growing detachment. The trial became a dramatic spectacle, drawing crowds and media attention from around the country. The prosecution's case centered around Jennifer's emotional state, arguing that her actions had been premeditated, driven by the slow burn of betrayal rather than a sudden burst of passion. She was painted as a woman who had allowed her jealousy and rage to consume her, methodically planning and executing her husband's murder. The defense, however, argued that Jennifer had been emotionally unstable, that her mind had been clouded by years of emotional neglect and the devastating discovery of her husband's affair. They suggested that while her actions were tragic, they were the result of a mind pushed too far. After days of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict: guilty of second-degree murder. The courtroom erupted in whispers, some in disbelief, others with a sense of grim justice. The jury had decided that Jennifer's actions, while deliberate, had not been premeditated to the degree that warranted the death penalty or a charge of first-degree murder. They sentenced her to 25 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 15 years. The verdict was met with mixed reactions from the public. Some felt that Jennifer had been a victim of circumstances, a woman pushed to her breaking point, by a man who had betrayed her in the most intimate way possible. Others believed that the justice system had been lenient, feeling that Jennifer's crime could not be excused no matter the emotional turmoil she had endured. Jennifer's time in prison was marked by deep self-reflection and regret over her actions. She often wondered if things could have been different had she confronted Michael about the affair without resorting to violence. Though she recognized that nothing could bring him back and that her actions were unforgivable, she tried to reconcile. With her children who had been placed in the care of relatives after her arrest, her son, now a teenager, resented her, and her young daughter struggled to understand the tragedy. In prison, Jennifer became more introspective, turning to art and writing to process her emotions. She also became involved in prison outreach, helping women with similar emotional struggles. Despite never fully forgiving herself, she tried to find meaning in her new life. Though eligible for parole after 15 years, Jennifer chose to serve her full sentence, feeling she didn't deserve freedom given the consequences of her actions and the deep pain she had caused her children and the people who once loved her. The weight of her choices continued to shape her existence, and she could not escape the reality of what she had done. She saw herself as a cautionary tale, a woman driven to extremes by betrayal and hurt, unable to reclaim the life she had lost. Meanwhile, the case of Michael, Jennifer, and Emma continued to haunt the public, raising unanswered questions. How could Jennifer, a seemingly composed woman, let her emotions lead to murder? Was the affair a symptom of deeper marital issues? And what role did Emma play in the tragedy? The public debated these questions for years, wondering if there could have been another way to resolve the situation without violence, and whether Michael would have left Jennifer for Emma. Thank you for watching. If you want to see more stories about betrayal, revenge, and shocking twists, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Click the bell icon so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. Stay tuned for more real-life crime tales that will leave you questioning the truth. And remember, the truth is always stranger than fiction. Make sure to check it out and let us know your thoughts in the comment section.